You are standing in the store, holding two shirts that feel almost the same, but one costs 4 times more than the other. Your hand tells you they are twins. The price tag swears they are strangers. Here is the truth I wish someone had handed me 20 years ago. Most of what you pay for men's clothing is not thread, not stitching, not cloth. It is a name printed on a label, and a story built to make you feel poor without it. That is not a modern complaint. It is old knowledge, the kind tailors and thrifty grandmothers used to judge a garment in 10 seconds flat, long before logos took over. And by the end of this, I will show you a test written down in a 1923 sewing manual that tells you in one motion whether a shirt was built to last 10 years or 10 washes. You already own everything you need to do it tonight. I still remember standing in a department store in Columbus, Ohio, in the spring of 2011, holding a $68 polo in one hand and a $16 polo in the other, turning them over, and feeling my stomach drop when I realized my fingers could not tell them apart. For years, I thought paying more meant getting more. I was the guy who believed the expensive rack had to be better, because why else would it cost that much? I was wrong. And being wrong cost me thousands of dollars over the years. So let me hand you what I have collected. Not opinions, tests. The forgotten little checks that let you walk into any store, ignore the tag, and know exactly what you are holding. 5 brands that quietly overcharge you, 5 that actually earn it, and the old method underneath all of it. Let me start with the thing that shook me first. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Walk into the back rooms of the clothing world and you find something strange. Many of the brands you think of as opposites are made in the same buildings. I do not mean similar buildings. I mean the same factory, the same cutting tables, sometimes the same workers on the same afternoon, sewing a shirt that will sell for $20 and a shirt that will sell for $90. This is not a rumor whispered online. It shows up again and again in trade reporting on manufacturing hubs in Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Portugal, where a single facility holds contracts for a dozen labels at once. The machines do not know whose name is going on the collar. They stitch the same way for everyone. So the first brand I want you to look at carefully is the classic American mall staple that sells basic cotton tees for around $35 each. For years, that price felt normal to me. Then I learned that the blank tee underneath, the actual body of the shirt, often starts life as a garment costing the company only a few dollars to produce. The rest is store, rent, marketing, and the comfortable feeling you get from a familiar logo. Now, I am not telling you that logo is worthless. Feeling good in what you wear is real. But here is the question that changed how I shop. If the cloth, the stitching, and the fit are identical to a shirt costing a third as much, what exactly are you buying with the difference? Most men have never been taught how to answer that, and that is not an accident, because there was a time when every household knew how to answer it. Before ready-made clothing flooded the shelves, people bought cloth and made garments, or paid a tailor who charged by skill and material. They could feel the difference between a tight weave and a loose one. They knew a strong seam from a weak one. They judged value with their hands, not with a price tag. That skill got quietly buried, and somebody benefited from burying it. I will get to exactly who and how in just a moment because it made me angrier than I expected. But first you need the tools so that when I name names, you can check every word for yourself. Let me give you the first real test, the one I use before I even look at a price. Here is a belief I want to challenge right now. Most men think you judge fabric by how soft it feels. Soft equals good. Rough equals cheap. That is backward more often than you would believe. A lot of cheap fabric is made soft on purpose, coated with chemical softeners and finishes that wash out after a few cycles. You bring it home feeling wonderful. 6 weeks later, it is thin, pilled, and scratchy. because the softness was a costume, not the cloth itself. So here is what to do instead. Hold the fabric up to a light, a window works, a lamp works, your phone flashlight works. Stretch it gently and look at how much light passes through the weave. A tight, dense weave blocks most of the light and shows a solid, even surface. A cheap, loose weave lets light pour through the gaps, and you can practically see the individual threads holding on for dear life. That gap is where durability goes to die. The looser the weave, the faster it thins, tears, and loses its shape. This is not a trick I invented. Home economics teachers taught this to students for decades. In the early 20th century, a woman named Mary Brooks Picken founded the Woman's Institute of Domestic Arts and Sciences in Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1916, and she taught thousands of people through mail courses how to judge textiles by holding them to the light and reading the weave like a page of print. She wrote it down plainly. Density is durability. Now think about what happens when you apply this in a store. Take that premium designer dress shirt priced at $140, hold it to the light. If you see through it like a curtain, you are paying a fortune for a weak weave dressed up with a strong name. I did this test on a shirt from a well-known premium brand that markets itself on heritage and craftsmanship, the kind with an $80 to $100 dress shirt. The light poured through. Then I did it on a shirt from a plain workwear label costing about $30, and the weave was so tight it barely glowed. My hands had lied to me for years. The light never did. So that is one brand on my overpriced list. The heritage dress shirt name that charges triple for a weave you can read a newspaper through. But weave is only the skin of the garment. The real story, the part that decides whether a jacket lasts 5 years or 50, is hidden inside where you were never meant to look. And once I learned what to feel for in there, I could not believe how many expensive coats failed the test. Let me tell you about the guts of a garment. Pick up any suit, jacket, or structured coat. Somewhere between the outer fabric and the inner lining there is a layer you never see. It gives the chest its shape and keeps the jacket from collapsing like a wet paper bag. For centuries, that layer was a piece of woven material, often horsehair and wool, stitched in by hand or machine so it floated with your body and molded to your chest over time. Tailors call this a canvas jacket. It is the reason old suits from the 1940s and 50s still hang beautifully in vintage shops today. The canvas inside broke in like a good pair of boots and became yours. Then someone found a shortcut. Instead of stitching in a canvas, they glue a sheet of fusible material to the back of the fabric. It is fast, it is cheap, it looks fine in the store, and it fails. Under heat and washing, the glue lets go, and the front of the jacket bubbles and ripples like a road in a heat wave. That damage cannot be repaired. The jacket is done. Here is the part that will bother you. Many jackets priced at $300, $400, even $500 are fully fused, glued. The same construction as a jacket at a fraction of the price. You are told you are buying craftsmanship and you are buying glue. So how do you check without a tailor? This is the pinch test, and it is beautifully simple. Reach for the lower front of the jacket, below the buttons. Pinch the outer fabric between your thumb and finger on the front layer only, then try to separate it slightly from the layer behind it, feeling for a third floating layer in between. On a canvas jacket, you can feel that loose inner layer shifting freely, like there is a third sheet of paper hiding in there that moves on its own. On a fused jacket, it feels stiff and welded together, like cardboard, because that is exactly what glue does. It welds. I learned this from an older gentleman who had spent 40 years altering suits, and he told me something I never forgot. He said the industry stopped teaching customers this test on purpose because the moment a man can feel glue with his own fingers, he stops paying canvas prices for fused work. That is the second brand on my overpriced list. The fashion-forward suit label that sells fully fused jackets at canvas prices and counts on you never pinching the hem. So we have weave and we have construction. Both are quiet, both are hidden, but there is one more layer of deception that hides in plain sight, right on the little tag at your neck, and almost nobody reads it correctly. Let me talk about the label, because the label is where the magic trick happens. Most men glance at the label to find their size, and that is it. But the fiber content printed on that tag is the single most honest thing about the whole garment, and brands know most people will not read it. So they let the price tag do the talking and hope the fiber tag stays quiet. Here is what I want you to understand. A shirt that says 100% cotton, or 100% wool, or 100% linen is telling you it is made of a fiber that breathes, lasts, and can be repaired. A shirt loaded with polyester, elastane, and mystery blends is often made of plastic, and plastic pills, traps odor, and wears out. Now here is the outrage. You will find $60 and $70 shirts from famous names that are largely polyester, while a plain, honest shirt down the street at $18 is pure cotton. You are paying premium money for cheaper raw material, and the only difference is the name and the marketing photo. This matters for your wallet in a way people rarely calculate. Think about the true cost of a garment, not what you pay at the register, but what you pay per wear. A $20 shirt you wear 5 times before it falls apart costs you $4 every time you put it on. A $40 shirt made of honest cloth that you wear 200 times costs you 20 cents a wear. The cheap shirt was the expensive one all along. Our grandparents understood this instinctively because they lived it. During the Second World War, the British government issued a program in 1941 called the Make Do and Mend campaign, and they printed pamphlets teaching ordinary people how to choose durable cloth, reinforce seams, and repair garments so they lasted for years. The whole idea was that a well-chosen, well-made item saves money over its lifetime, and a cheap one drains it. They knew something we forgot. Buying quality was not snobbery. It was thrift. It was survival. So the third brand on my overpriced list is the trendy name that sells plastic blend shirts at natural fiber prices, betting you will never flip the tag and read what you are actually wearing. By now you might be thinking this all sounds good, but that it takes money to buy quality, and money is exactly what is tight right now. I hear that. So let me stop and talk directly to you, the person doing the math in your head, worried this is a video about spending more. It is not. This next part is for you especially, the one who wants to spend less and still win, because here is the beautiful secret. Every test I've given you costs nothing. The light test, the pinch test, reading the fiber tag, they cost $0 and take 10 seconds. You do not need a new wardrobe. You do not need special tools. You need your eyes, your hands, and the knowledge which you are getting right now for free. If you want to go deeper into exactly who buried it and why, and pick up every forgotten test in one place, I have written all of it down in a book called Smart Basics, part of a series that also includes Deep Frugal and System Complete, all available through the link in the description. These are the same principles we are walking through together right now, laid out so you can take them into any store, any closet, any market, without having to remember a video. If that sounds like the kind of knowledge worth keeping on your shelf, go check it out below. Now, coming up next, I am going to hand you the very first real test, the one I use before I even look at a price tag. And it starts with something you can do with nothing but a window and your own 2 hands. And there is one more free test I want to put in your hands tonight, one that uses only things already sitting in your kitchen drawer, because this is where the old knowledge really shines. Take a garment you already own and are unsure about, or one you are thinking of buying that allows it. Find a hidden inside seam, a place no one will see, like the inner hem or the seam allowance. Pull one loose thread free, just a small piece, an inch or 2 if you can find a stray one. Now, carefully, with a match or a lighter over a sink or a plate, hold a flame to that single thread and watch how it behaves. This is the old burn test, and textile workers have used it for over a century to tell natural fiber from plastic when the label was missing or lying. Here is how to read it. Natural cotton or linen catches quickly, smells like burning paper or leaves, and leaves behind a soft, gray ash you can crush to powder between your fingers. Wool smells like burning hair and leaves a dark, crushable, brittle bead that turns to ash. That is the smell of a real animal fiber, and it is unmistakable. Now the plastics. Polyester, nylon, and acrylic do not burn like nature. They melt. They shrink away from the flame, drip like candle wax, smell sharp and chemical like something industrial, and leave behind a hard, plastic bead you cannot crush. That hard bead is the truth. It tells you that soft luxury shirt is mostly petroleum, no matter what the price tag hinted. I did this the first time at my own kitchen sink with a shirt I had paid far too much for, convinced it was a fine cotton. The thread curled, melted, and left a little plastic ball as hard as a bead of glass. I sat there staring at it. I had paced a store for 20 minutes justifying that price, and a single match told me the truth in 3 seconds. You can do that tonight with a match you already have, over a sink you already own, on a shirt already hanging in your closet. No purchase required. That is the whole point of this kind of knowledge. It puts the power back in your hands and takes it away from the tag. And once your hands know these tests, a strange thing happens. The expensive brands stop impressing you, and the honest ones start standing out. So let me give you the other side, because it is only fair. Not every high price is a lie. Some brands actually earn every dollar, and here is how to spot them. Let me tell you what real quality feels like, so you never overpay again, but you also never underpay for junk and waste your money twice. The first brand truly worth the price is not flashy. It is the workwear world, the boots and jackets and jeans built for people who work with their hands and cannot afford for their gear to fail. Look at heavy-duty denim from makers who still use what is called selvage denim, woven on old shuttle looms that produce a tighter, self-finished edge. Here is a fact that stunned me. The riveted work pant, the ancestor of every pair of jeans you own, was patented by Levi Strauss and a tailor named Jacob Davis on May 20th, 1873. The rivets went on the stress points, the pocket corners, and the base of the fly, because those were the spots that tore first. That was a durability decision made 150 years ago, and the good makers still honor it. When you find jeans with reinforced stress points, a tight selvage weave, and honest heavy cotton, and you hold them to the light and no glow comes through, that is a garment that will outlast a decade of the cheap stuff. Do the math on that. One pair of well-made jeans at $90 that last 12 years beats 6 pairs of $50 jeans that blow out at the knee in 2. You spent $90 instead of $300, and you owned one great thing instead of babysitting 6 failing ones. The second brand worth the money is the honest, natural fiber knitwear maker. When you find a sweater that is 100% merino wool or lamb's wool, tightly knit so it holds its shape, and you can trace the seams where the panels are joined firmly rather than glued or thinly overlocked, you are holding something that can last 20 years and be mended when a moth or a snag finds it. Wool regulates temperature, resists odor so you wash it less, and ages gracefully. A plastic blend sweater does none of that, and it costs the earth in the long run. The third brand worth the price is any maker that publishes its stitch count and seam construction openly, because a company that tells you it uses a high number of stitches per inch in flat felled or French seams is a company betting on you inspecting the work. Cheap makers hide construction. Honest makers brag about it because they know it is where they win. And that brings me to the deepest test of all, the one that separates the people who know from the people who guess. This is the finale I promised you, and it comes straight out of that 1923 sewing manual I mentioned at the start. It is so simple you will wonder why no store ever showed you, and once you understand why they never did, you are going to be as angry as I was. Let me set the stage first, because you need to feel the weight of it. For most of human history, clothing was expensive and labor was cheap, which is the exact opposite of today. A garment was meant to be repaired, altered, and handed down. So it was built with something modern clothes almost never have. It was built with room to be saved. Turn any garment inside out and look at the seams, the strips of fabric left over past the stitching line where two pieces of cloth are joined. That leftover strip is called the seam allowance, and it is the single most honest measure of whether a garment was built to last or built to be thrown away. Here is the standard the old tailors and home sewers lived by, written down in textile and sewing manuals from the early 20th century, including the teaching materials that came out of Mary Brooks Pickens Institute and the sewing texts of that era around 1920 and 1923. A well-made garment leaves a generous seam allowance, commonly at least 5/8 of an inch, sometimes a full inch or more on trousers and jackets. That extra cloth was not waste, it was insurance. It meant a tailor could let out a waistband when you gained a little, take in a shoulder when you lost a little, and reinforce a seam when it began to strain. The garment could grow and shrink and heal along with your body for decades. Now go and look at a modern shirt or a pair of pants from a fast, cheap maker. Turn it inside out and look at that seam allowance. You will find a pitiful sliver, 1/8 of an inch or less, often chewed up and locked down by a rushed overlock stitch that cuts and binds the edge in one pass. There is no room to let anything out. There is no room to repair. The moment it strains, it tears, and once it tears, there is nothing left to sew back to. The garment is designed to reach the end of its life and have no way to be revived. Sit with that for a second. That tiny seam allowance is not an accident of cost. It is a decision. Every 1/8 of an inch of cloth they do not give you is cloth they save on millions of garments, and it is a repair they guarantee you can never make. The garment is engineered to die, and to die in a way you cannot fix. That is the villain I promised you at the beginning, and now you can see it with your own eyes in your own closet tonight. It is not one evil man in a boardroom. It is a whole system that learned it makes more money. When you cannot judge quality and cannot repair what you own. When your grandparents could feel a weave, pinch for canvas, read a fiber, and measure a seam allowance, they bought less and kept it longer, and that is terrible for anyone whose profit depends on you coming back next season. So the knowledge was allowed to fade. It was never taught in schools anymore. It was replaced with advertising that told you the logo was the quality. But the knowledge did not die. It survived in old manuals sitting in library archives, in the hands of tailors in their 70s and 80s, in wartime pamphlets, and in the memory of grandmothers who learned to sew before they learned to drive. Someone wrote it down. Someone kept it. And now it is sitting in your hands, and no one can take it back out. So here is exactly what to do this weekend, and it costs you nothing. Take 3 things out of your closet. 1 cheap, 1 middle, 1 expensive. Turn each one inside out. Find a seam and look at the width of that seam allowance. Measure it against your fingernail if you have nothing else, since most fingernails are close to 1/2 an inch across. The garments with a generous allowance were built to be saved. The ones with a sliver were built to be replaced. I promise you the price tag will not match up with what you find. The most expensive one may have the stingiest seams of all, and that is the exact moment the whole trick falls apart in front of you. Then take it one step further, the way the old sewers did. When you buy your next garment, choose the one with the room in its seams, and the first time it strains or a button pulls, do not throw it out. Open it up. Use that generous allowance and let a tailor or your own hands give it new life. A good tailor charges very little to let out a seam, and it turns a garment into something that serves you for years instead of months. That is how a household used to build a wardrobe that lasted a lifetime for less money than most people now spend in a single year of buying and discarding. Once you know this, You cannot be sold a lie again. You walk into any store, ignore the logo, ignore the price, hold the fabric to the light, pinch the jacket for glue, flip the tag and read the fiber, and turn it inside out to measure the seams. In 60 seconds, with no tools and no expertise, you know more about that garment than the person who sold it to you. You buy the shirt worth $40 and skip the one that only costs $140 because of its name. You just got back something that was quietly taken from every one of us. The simple ability to know what we are buying with our own two hands. You are not the kind of person who wants to be told what things are worth. You are the kind who would rather pass a real skill to a son or a daughter or a neighbor than keep paying for a story printed on a label. That is who these old methods were made for, and that is who is keeping them alive now. So let me ask you one thing, and I really want your answer. Go turn one garment inside out tonight, cheap or expensive, and measure that seam allowance, and then come tell me in the comments which one surprised you the most, the expensive one that betrayed you or the cheap one that turned out honest. Tell me what you found and where you are watching from. I read them, and I learn from you too. And if you believe, like I do, that knowing how things are truly made is a kind of freedom the marketing world would rather we forget, then come along with the people here who are quietly reclaiming these lost skills one by one. There is a whole inheritance of this knowledge waiting to be handed back. Next time I am going to show you the forgotten way our grandparents made a single pair of leather shoes last 30 years using a wax mixture they made at home for pennies, and why the shoe companies stopped telling anyone how to do it. You are going to want to be there for that one. This video gave you the overview, but the full brand by brand teardown, every fabric test laid out by hand, picks up right where I stopped, inside the Old Ways Almanac. In there you can ask me your own clothing question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. And you won't be alone, Old Ways folks like you are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel anytime, one click. No risk. If this helped you shop a little smarter, do subscribe and stay with me. I have more videos right here to help you spend wisely and dress well without wasting your money.